Today I bring you a review of a much smaller and cheaper game. Set in 2030's Crimea after a nuclear catastrophe, Krai Mira is what you get when two indie developers decide to turn their love for the post-apocalypse into their own little RPG. The first thing that will shock you is the absolute lack of character creation. You can't even pick your own gender, you're stuck playing as this random dude with an eye patch. The absence of such features in the role-playing genre is almost criminal, especially for a game that places no particular weight on the protagonist's backstory. Similarly to the classic Fallouts, this game can be quite challenging with its real-time gameplay and turn-based combat. It eases you in reasonably well. I thought I was doing great at first. I made a fortune from faffing about at the bar and then decided to do some protection missions for this trader gal from Forstadt. I started taking on more jobs from these caravans and everything was fine and dandy until one time it turned out that the location I was taking my employer to was full of hostiles. I ended up barely surviving, two of my companions were killed, and my last one died protecting me on the way back to the settlement. It was grim to say the least. There isn't much hand-holding here and the game can be cryptic at times. You will lose all of your gear, your companions will die, and you will face betrayal. The wastelands of Crimea are a lethally unforgiving place, and this is something I personally loved. As you've probably figured out by now, along the way you can recruit various people to join your group. However, there is no way to trade your gear with them. This is especially frustrating because some of the party members wear next to no armor, meaning that you will have to waste your drugs to keep them alive. Yet for some reason the developers allowed us to give our companions first aid, but not to give them any proper equipment to protect themselves with. It's a strange design choice that ends up being quite annoying. Krai Mira's graphics are a mixed bag, although I can't help but appreciate the variety and haunting beauty of its environments with their full day and night cycle. I also have to acknowledge that it was made by just two people with some help from 3 or 4 others. Nevertheless, the overall picture is dragged down a few notches by mediocre character animations and poor draw distance. It's clear that the game would have benefited greatly from more resources and more designers working on it. There is a definite plus though in the form of very short loading times with almost no bugs or glitches present, while the frame rate is always buttery smooth. It is an extremely stable and well-tested product. Over the course of 22 hours, Krai Mira crashed on me only once, which makes it significantly steadier than the average AAA video game these days. The user interface is not particularly pretty to look at, but this also makes it easy to navigate at all times. It's clear they prioritized functionality over the visuals in this department. The soundtrack is composed of music that feels unique and atmospheric, at times it's even sort of jazzy. This is definitely Krai Mira's most original feature that you won't find in other games. It's one of the few things that really set it apart from Fallout. They even use metal nuts for bolts as currency here, which is a reference to the bottle caps. The sound effects are alright, but sadly there is almost no voice acting in the game, except for a short intro movie and the occasional swearing from the protagonist when starting a fight. Thematically, the game has plenty in common with the Mad Max franchise as well. There are scantily clad warrior chicks with huge mohawks, crazy raider dudes wearing gas masks, tattooed cannibalistic tribesmen, a corrupt totalitarian regime, biker gangs fighting for oil. You can even be a katana-wielding badass yourself. There are many items to choose from, with interesting guns and appropriately apocalyptic armor types, such as suits made from car tires and similar inventions. You can play dice poker just like in the first 2 Witcher games, which is somewhat addictive in its simplicity, and you just know it's a Slavic game when there's gambling and hookers. In fact, gaming is pretty fun in Krai Mira. Apart from dice, there are cards, slot machines and roulette you can sink your time into. It's an entertaining little system that can make you rich quickly if you're lucky. And you'll never guess what, apart from medication of course, helps remove radiation from your character's body. Sex. Yes, that's right. Paying prostitutes in the wasteland to have sexual intercourse with them apparently makes the rats go away. Oh well, don't think I'll ever understand the reasoning behind that one, but I'm not complaining. Perhaps the main problem of Krai Mira is its linear story. Don't get me wrong, it's a decent indie offering for a low price that you can get around 20 hours of gameplay from. Apart from the main plot, however, there is little to keep you entertained other than the repetitive escort missions, random travel events and gambling. Moreover, the primary quest is fairly linear with little choice even though it takes place in quite large chunk of an open world. It does eventually branch off into multiple paths, resulting in several different endings that can be achieved, but in the end it just feels like a huge missed opportunity. Krai Mira is basically a low-budget Polish-Ukrainian rendition of the original turn-based Fallout formula. And while it manages to get plenty right with its soundtrack, challenging gameplay, atmosphere, characters, equipment, environments and more, it also fails to reach the same level of depth that the Fallout games had in their quests, stats, companions and attributes, and so on. I can easily imagine that Van Buren, the original Black Isle version of Fallout 3 that was cancelled in late 2003, would have looked similar to this in its final form if it was made by fewer people on a much tighter budget. I feel that Toltec Studio could have benefited greatly from releasing Krai Mira's extended cut on GOG.com as well. It seems to me as though they may have been able to find a larger following of players looking for old school experiences like this over there, rather than on Steam. In any case, I can recommend this game to all fans of Interplay's classics as long as you don't expect too much from it and do not mind playing a slightly more casual interpretation of the first two Fallout games. It's certainly not great and requires substantial polishing, but I enjoyed it a fair bit and would love to see Krai Mira grow into a greater and more ambitious project one day. Thank you for watching, I'll catch you next time.